out there one kite. I'm already into the 420, damn it.
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
You know I blame it on industry. I blame it on my own hypocrisy. Miseducation and politicians. No one's willing to step up and speak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pace Radio Show. I'm your host, Al Graham, and we are live. Yes, we are live here at Lifestyle Radio, and we are live at Canyon Days in downtown Campbellford. I am sitting in the front window looking out at the nice, wet pavement. Yeah, we had some rain here today, but it looks like it stopped. I am joined by my joint host, Northern Ontario, Kim Cooper, and her guest, who just happens to be a person who is bringing education, knowledge, and assisting those addicted to drugs. But before we meet our guest, Kim and I are going to talk a little bit news. Well, Kim, how is things in Northern Ontario?
Well, we're drying out and thawing out, and spring is most definitely in the air. People are out and about and enjoying festivities in the north, including a few brand new cannabis events that we have happening out here. So it's been an exciting spring so far.
Well, I saw you held, you're in the paper there, you held the first annual 420 rally there. It looked like you had some snow on the ground still.
Yeah, we were snowed in for the 420. We actually literally had to go and snow plow it out. We took snow blowers the day before and shoveled out our space. But we had a wonderful event with over 175 people stopping by our event booth. It went off so wonderfully that we decided to throw a GMM this year. So we're looking forward to hosting a GMM at 1 o'clock in Hollinger Park.
Nice. Good. It's getting spread the knowledge to the north. It's always a good thing.
Yeah,
I know we're used to seeing you down in the one in Toronto, which is obviously going to be held this Saturday afternoon.
Yeah. I go to the one in Toronto every year. I make the trip south back to my home in Toronto, and I enjoy the festivities of GMM at Queen's Park there. And, I enjoy that trip every year. Sadly, I am going to miss the big event in Toronto this year, but it's exciting to be participating in a brand new one in a brand new community.
Oh, I'm sure it is. It'll be interesting to see how many people you get out to do the march, especially you had the coverage from the 420 event. I seen that there was another article in the paper about the GMM coming up. So, yeah, you should get a few hundred people. If we get a couple of dozen, I'll be a very happy camper. But we did get some coverage on the 92.1 FM radio station. Gave us some coverage on their 420 report. Yeah.
So that
there
was
you go.
See.
Yeah, so you got some publicity, which is great.
Yeah.
You got the word out there.
Yeah.
That's what we want to do.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, talking about getting the word out there, a couple of years ago there was a court case that determined that some of the police officers seemed to stretch the truth about cannabis growing in houses, and I see that is now affecting here when it comes to legalization, where the real estate people are warning that legal cannabis plants in the house is considered a grow-up.
Yeah, come on, people. This is just getting a bit ridiculous. I've made this comparison time and time again when this issue comes up in conversation. How many people have, mountain ranges of houseplants in their homes? I know some people that it's like a tropical jungle when you go in, because they have houseplants like everywhere. Every small space that is available is occupied by a plant of some kind. There are no regulations for houseplants. When we're talking about cannabis plants, with legalization, we're talking about 4 plants here, people.
Yeah.
That is not a grow up by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. Well, they worry that indoor cultivation can cause damage that result in increased expenses, especially for landlords, who will then pass those costs on to the tenants, and rents will rise.
Yeah, I'm going to quote Kirk Tusaw here. He chimed in on this topic not too long ago, and he said every single one of the risks that are argued to disprove a federal judge satisfaction in Allard. You can burn houses down with stoves, which are the leading cause of house fires today. In this, the response that you want to give to ban the stove. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, big time, big time. There's lots more dangerous things that are lurking inside a house than four little cannabis plants, man.
That is for sure. And the majority of people that are going to grow cannabis plants in their homes are going to do it in a tent of some kind because they want to at least get the production out of them and get something out of it at the end of the day when they're done. So they're going to be doing it properly and tending to them because we want the product at the end of the day. We don't just throw tomato seeds in the ground and walk away and say, oh, if it grows, it grows. No, you tend the tomato plant so that you can get a tomato.
For sure.
It's the same thing.
Yep, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. That's an amendment that they want the Liberal government to change, but I can't see that happening. It better not happen.
It better not happen. I mean, we're getting restricted up the wazoo here. Pretty soon, we're going to have to get some rights to breathe oxygen.
Oh yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, it's everything else is polluted the air, not a cannabis plant. So
yeah, for sure.
Yes, for sure. Okay, well, keep our fingers crossed as things go through the Senate. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Everybody's watching right now.
Well, yeah, we're about a month away. Yeah, June 7th, and today's the 5th of May, right? So or 2nd.
About a month away.
So about a month away.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll find out. All right, well, it's time to move on to our guest for the show, eh?
Yes, for sure.
All right. It's a person, as I described, is involved in something that includes everything from education, shared knowledge, and assists those who are addicted to drugs. We'd like to welcome Neil Magnuson to the Pace Radio Show. Hello, Neil. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Hey, we appreciate you coming on to the show and talking to our listeners. We always like to hear from you every once in a while.
Very good. I like to be here every once in a while, keep people up to date on what's going on here on the West Coast.
Exactly, and you've been doing some terrific work, and we're looking forward to hearing about it tonight in the program.
Cool.
All right. Okay. The normal routine is around here, I will hand the reins over to Kim, and she will start firing the questions, and I will just jump in as we go along. All right?
Sounds good.
Is there a penalty for wrong answers, or is a prize?
No penalties at all. Absolutely not. You may be forced to go in the corner and do a dab or a bong.
Yeah,
or something.
that's what I was going to say. Yeah,
I was wondering if I was supposed to stay up and study last night the way that sounded with the siren gestures on it.
Give yourself some cue cards for the day. Yeah.
I read the bio you had on me. That was pretty good. That gets me a little bit up to date.
Right on, as long as we all know where we are. It's good. It's good. Funny as ever, Neil Magnuson, everybody out there, in case you don't know who Neil is, longtime patient advocate out in the BC coast and in Vancouver, has done amazing work with the 12 High Chicks magazine, the Mom Cup, 420 Vancouver, Cannabis Substitution Program. He's been a part of the cannabis community for a couple of decades, I think, or close to it. Neil, you've just been all over the map out there, involved in so much for so long. We were talking just before we got started. I think one of the first times we had you on the show was the release of your movie.
Yeah, Still Trippin'. Still up on YouTube, I believe. They've purged a lot from YouTube, but I checked it the other day and it was still there. You can find it on YouTube if you punch in Still Trippin' full movie. That's a while ago now. That's back in 2010. It was about why is cannabis still illegal. And I was thinking about that and the theme of the movie the other day, and I thought, well, it's still relevant today because even though they're talking about legalization, there's still this whole other realm of illegal weed going to be there still, and that's going to include all of us and all of our friends. So, it's still illegal as far as we're concerned, and most of what we're wanting to do is going to be still illegal.
Yeah,
so,
sure. So,
and that was my 20th. That was my 20th 420. just passed. I was pretty excited about that. Yeah, 20 years in a row of being there and talking to people and trying to change for these laws. Although I must say, when we first started it, I thought it would be a maximum of 10 years and we would have actual legalization. So here we are 20 years later and we still don't have it.
And we're still plugging away and striving for the same goals 20 years later. And you're still at it, Neil, with just as much drive as you had the very first day.
Well, yeah, I quit my job back in 2004 when I was helping to renovate what became the Herb School and was reading The Emperor Wears No Clothes during that long weekend renovation. And that just really opened my eyes to the real horrific harms of prohibition, the amazing value of cannabis in so many different ways. And I cried my eyes out that night. I quit my job the next morning, and I have been full-time at it ever since, doing a number of different things. And here we are, you talk about I'm still actively seeking my goals, and we are. I had an exchange with Kirk Tusaw at the Grassroots Conference here recently, and he said, well, if Canadians want to smoke cannabis and possess cannabis legally, they can do that. That's huge. And I said, yeah, I guess I kind of agree with that. But, all the people that are at 420, all the vendors that were there, several hundred of them, none of those people are going to get a license and are going to be able to continue what they're doing. In fact, they're going to be chased down as criminals because they're not going to stop doing what they're doing. And none of the growers are going to stop growing either. So we're going to spend a whole lot of our precious tax dollars on trying to curb the flow of cannabis to protect the monopoly that's being set up by former prohibitionists and friends of Trudeau so that they can be the biggest cannabis suppliers in the world because all Canadians are going to be forced into buying their product. My goals are nowhere near being met. Families are still being ruined. People's lives are still being ruined. We're still wasting tax dollars. And this amazing plant is still being stigmatized and lied about to protect the interests of these bastards. So, yeah, we're not there yet at all.
Yeah, that's for sure, Neil. That's for sure. A lot of sentiments reached in that bit of a statement you just made there. We're going to touch on a whole lot of and break down with some of what you've said. Legalization is up and coming on the House floor in the Senate there, and if it passes, you touched on this a little bit. It's nowhere near what we advocated for when we were hoping for legalization in this country and we voted Trudeau in. Do you think this was the plan all along?
Yeah, I think that once we got very articulate with our arguments about why prohibition was wrong and why cannabis should be legalized, and we screamed for legalize and regulate, and we wore bracelets that said that, and that was our mantra. And we were a little bit naive for sure in asking for that. They listened to what we were saying and said, all right, we can give them legalize and regulate, and we can completely take over this industry, monopolize it, and continue to have jobs for police officers and court people and cage people. And, the gangsters can still get a good living out of the under 19 people. And none of the players right now that are making a fortune off of prohibition will have to be harmed in any way. And we can still say that we legalized and regulate, because regulate means that, the regulations are such that you can't be part of their distribution scheme at all because of past criminal records, or you're just not going to make the cut. There's going to be hundreds of people applying all across Canada. Every municipality is going to be like that. So there's a beep going on. Is that just on my end, or?
No, it's all. I think that's on ours too. It's all
okay.
Good.
So,
we're spreading the word. We're spreading the word, Neil.
It's Reefer Madness 2.0, isn't it? And it's Prohibition 2.0 as well. You're not going to be allowed to consume cannabis in public without being in danger of going to prison for public intoxication here in British Columbia, according to the regulations they've brought down.
Yeah.
No consumption in a boat. No consumption in any park anywhere in British Columbia.
Yeah, a lot of people are shocked. Yeah, a lot of people are shocked. Yeah, a lot of people are shocked with the direction that BC went, given how liberal they were. At least the city of Vancouver has been with consumption and dispensaries and that.
Those are two different things.
Is different.
Yeah, those are two very different things. And Vancouver has not been lenient with respect to dispensaries, in my opinion. With consumption, they have, because we do consume openly in public without fear of arrest. There's no possession charges other than maybe a half a dozen a year that come out of the VPD. But the dispensaries, on the other hand, those regulations that they brought down are barbaric. I mean, they're outrageous and insane. $30,000 licensing fee. There's nothing close to that in the city. It's like a couple $100 to have a drugstore license, for example. No edibles, no vapor lounge, no ATMs.
Oh, we lost Neil.
We lost Neil.
Live radio.
Yeah, well, we'll work on
call
getting
Neil back in.
I think there's a lot of people that were surprised on the BC end of things, because at first you heard about the public retail situations for sale, so people were okay, it is great. And then I had read that if someone was growing some cannabis plants up on their balcony, Neil's back.
Ah, you dropped the call. I didn't even know till the phone rang. I was just going off on a rant there.
Oops. Yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a 360 from what we expected to see from BC.
Well, not all of us. Freddie Pritchard was sure preaching the truth. And we should have known better. We can't trust these people. We never have been able to trust them. We should have known by the smirk on Trudeau's face when he said he was going to legalize recreational weed that he had something up his sleeve. Yeah. So what I was saying, I guess, when I dropped off was about the regulations in Vancouver for dispensaries. Those are not friendly regulations at all. It's $30,000 for a licensing fee. There's no vapor lounges allowed. There's no edibles allowed. There's no mail order. There's no home delivery. There's no under 19. There's no ATM machines. There's criminal record checks. None of those things apply to the thousands and thousands of recreational alcohol dispensaries that we have all over the city. All of them are discriminatory. They take away revenue streams. It is not the role of public servants to stifle commerce and to impede business. That's not what public servants are there for. They're there to facilitate business between citizens and people and groups that want to trade and work amongst themselves. If regulations are to be applied, they're to be applied when there's reason for it, when there's harm being caused, and the regulations need to be designed to address that harm in reasonable ways that take into account people's human rights and balance that. And whenever those regulations get to the point where there's a thriving underground going to happen as a result, you have to scale them back, especially if it's for dangerous products. Thankfully, not again for cannabis, but for dangerous products. I mean, you can't have the underground selling those things. They have no regulations. They don't care about what dose you're taking. They don't care about you as a patient. So the dangerous plant medicines and synthetics that are out there really need to be distributed through a healthcare system to adults that demand it in ways that make sense, with regulations that don't allow for an underground to thrive without any regulations at all. So we've got a long way to go in drug reform policy here in Canada even, and the rest of the world is even worse.
Yeah, so I find it hard to trust Trudeau, given the latest episode that took place at one of their caucus meetings, where they all voted that they wanted to look at decriminalization of all drugs as one of their platform policies, and Trudeau decided to not do that, even though it's what all of his membership voted on to take place.
Yeah, I mean, trusting politicians is really something none of us should ever do. You cannot trust politicians. They lie by nature. They'll tell you one thing out of one side of their mouth, and the person on the other side of them gets a completely different story based on what the politician thinks they want to hear. We cannot trust them. They don't have our interests in mind. We've allowed this democracy to provide access to these corporate interests that want to monopolize and exploit as best they can, and that's why we're being exploited the way that we are in this country here. With a free country and public servants and huge, vast areas that we could be turning into into this amazing plant and using it for industrial purposes and medicinal purposes and nutritional purposes. We should be rich beyond imagination, but we're not, because we're being scammed and squeezed and sucked dry by these corporations that we provide access to our politicians behind closed doors, and politicians that aren't properly scrutinized, without proper transparency with what they're doing. They're not limited in whatever they can do. They think they can do whatever the hell they want until they get voted out down the road. And we need to reset this democracy that we got going on here. We're all in a lot of trouble with all these outrageous regulations that aren't designed to protect the public at all. They're designed to protect the corporations that they're supposed to be regulating to make sure they don't harm the public. And we're all going to be harmed by this corporate cannabis too. And the black market's still going to thrive, and our young people are still at risk. And this whole fentanyl crisis that is going on right across North America is all driven by prohibition. There'd be no deaths by street drug-laced prohibition, or pardon me, fentanyl, if there was no prohibition. Yeah, it just gets me crazy.
I know it does. I want to get into all of that with the drug substitution program when we come back after the break, because I know that's a very close to your heart subject, and I want to give it its just desserts in its due time. Before we get off the politics topic, I want to take this in a little bit of a different direction, but the same sort of a thing. What are your thoughts, and I can imagine, on the police forces across this great nation of ours saying they need more money to police legal cannabis?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to earlier. There's legal cannabis and there's illegal cannabis. And right now, everything out there is illegal cannabis. And to try to transition to legal cannabis, it just is not going to work. Einstein said that, you lose respect for government when you try to enforce laws that cannot be enforced. And that's what's going to happen here. But I'm appalled with all of these groups that, are trying to climb on the bandwagon of making a whole bunch of money off of this ending of prohibition. It should be the opposite of which groups are making money on this. That's what we were really screaming about all this time, is stop wasting our tax dollars ruining people's lives. And they're still going to waste even more tax dollars ruining even more people's lives over a plant, over something that's not criminal at all. It has been completely undermining our justice system for all of this time to be calling possession of a plant or the dealing of a plant a crime. A crime is intentionally causing harm to somebody. It's determined by whether or not they can prove beyond a doubt that you caused an amount of damage that would pull down that one side of a set of scales that older matriarch is holding. She's blindfolded, and all of that symbolization that's there does not ever apply to the possession of cannabis. People in possession of cannabis are not criminal. They've not intended to harm anybody. There's no victims anywhere. All this nonsense about let's save the children and public health and safety issues, where are the victims? Where is there any child that has been harmed in any significant way through overdosing on cannabis or getting into their parents' edibles? We have them showing up in hospitals because the parents take their kids there when that happens sometimes, because the kids are falling asleep or they just know that they've gotten into their edibles and there's something not right. But there's nothing that the hospital can do other than to give them a quiet space, give them some peace and comfort with their parents present, and then they're better the next day than they've been for weeks. More attentive, more alert, feeling better. There's no harm being caused to these kids. I'm not saying you should allow your kids to be eating edibles just to have them feel better the next day. I think that's up to a parent what they do. But cannabis is a supplement to the human endocannabinoid system, the system that overrides and regulates and maintains homeostasis amongst all the other human systems that make the body function. It's cannabinoids that are created by the human body that mimic exactly what the cannabinoids on the cannabis plant do, that help us be healthy and get better when we're not healthy and live healthy lives. And you don't develop an endocannabinoid system sometime after you're born. That starts developing right around the time when you're first forming as a fetus. And you don't, you're getting cannabinoids in mother's milk. You're getting cannabinoids every time you laugh. You're getting cannabinoids every time your body needs to deal with inflammation from the time you're born. So all of this reefer madness and all the lies that they're telling and the science that's being stifled is harming a lot of people. I've been trying to make this case for a long time with my lawyer friends, and they just say it's not actionable. But even Kurt Tusa, I heard him say the other day, The government has been caught, the prohibition that imposed by our government is continuing to cause serious harm to our communities, as was pointed out by the 2002 Senate report, that the harm being caused to communities by prohibition is far greater than any harm that could ever be caused by even the abuse of cannabis, whatever that is. So if they're causing all of this harm, and it's demonstrable, and they're knowing since probably the Ledain Commission and beyond that even, that there was no justification for prohibiting cannabis and that it was causing harm, they have intentionally caused harm to people. That, in my mind, and every other person that I think has a grasp on what law is all about, is a crime. So why can't we take these people to task? I'm not sure why the lawyers aren't willing to try to do that, because to me it's a horrendous crime, and they knew what they were doing. They still know what they're doing. Somebody should take these people to task. I don't know. I wish I could. I wish I was a lawyer. I wish I was rich. All I can do is talk about it. That's my only power, it seems. But,
and it's a power that you wield greatly, my friend. You talk very well. You're educated on the subject, and you can definitely let people know what's what as far as laws and rights and so forth go. That's for sure. I just find it amazing that police departments are saying that they somehow need more money to read a list. I mean, because that's what it's going to come down to. They'll have a list much the same as the one that they have for alcohol that says how much everybody's allowed to have. It doesn't require a whole lot
alcohol?
Of... there are in some provinces there are carry limits on alcohol.
Well, I don't think there is here.
In some provinces, there are carry limits on alcohol. Like you can't buy enough to throw a party unless you have a permit for the party and that kind of stuff, right? Yeah.
Well, move to BC. You can fill your cup.
So some provinces do have carry limits, and we also have it for tobacco. So, I mean, any list that the police department is going to require is going to be the same as that. So it doesn't take a lot of education or training to know how much a person is allowed to have. It's just a new rule. And what about all the hundreds of millions of dollars they're going to save on policing cannabis and doing drug busts and breaking down people's houses and ripping apart people's lives? That'll no longer happen. So
but they'll have 17 new laws that they'll have to enforce.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So this requires more money. But what about the money they're already saving? Nobody's discussing that.
Yeah, I know. And then here in Vancouver with our 420, there was such a hue and cry about the expense that the city was under with all the policing costs and this and that. Well, the police spent all morning, dozens and dozens of them, towing cars and ticketing cars that would stop for any more than 2 minutes to unload their stuff. If they walked away from their car, there was a cop right there. There was a ticket on the dash, and if that person wasn't back in a couple more minutes, their car was gone. Yeah. So they made a ton of money on that, too, they don't talk about.
Yeah, they made a lot of money, and they set themselves up right for that. That's for sure.
They never mention that, though. It's funny how their accounting goes. They talk about all of this and all of that, and they don't talk about all of this and all of that.
No, the money that they made on the fines.
Yeah. And I heard, radio, the media is not kind to us here with respect to our 420. They got a real hard-on for bashing our 420. One reporter on CKNW saying that year after year we leave a huge mess for the city to clean up. Well, I personally take great pride in leaving whatever space we use for whatever rally we've had much cleaner than when we found it. The grass this year was much better than it was before our rally the year before. We always clean up our garbage. This year we hired a professional crew, as well as all the volunteers that we pay joints to do it. So we get all of this lies and bullshit, and once it's out there, it's out there. And a lot of people hear it. They don't hear the counter to it. They believe it. So we still have a war of words. We still got a bunch of lies being told and a real battle of public relations going on. They're still stigmatizing us hugely with these regulations, treating it as if it's somehow worse than alcohol, and people that were using it, well, they must be worse than alcoholics, therefore, by extrapolation.
And the battle continues, right?
We will win, though. I am optimistic.
Talking about continuing, we should continue our conversation after our break.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Normally, I try to connect the bumper music to our guests. And with Neil working with the Vancouver Cannabis Substitute Program, what I've done instead of putting music in there, got some discussion from a doctor. And so tonight is a pain doctor who has found that cannabis is great to treat people who are addicted to drugs. And we'll hear from him throughout the show. So, and then after the break, Kim and I will continue our discussion with Neil Magnuson. This is the Pace Radio Show. We are live at lifestyleradio.net.
Hey, this is Cheech.
And this is Chong.
And you're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
What is it?
Lifestyle Radio. Say it one more time.
420 Radio?
Ooh.
Hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
A lot of the fears around opioid, going off of the opioid, is because the patients have all experienced withdrawal syndrome, an abrupt cessation, and they think that there's no way they can come off of it. And that's all they remember is, that was the most horrible experience. It was like I was dying. And these are even in legitimate pain patients. These are pain patients that have legitimate pain, and over time, they would like to go off of them, but they can't.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
Are you looking for cannabis news, education, and people's opinions? Are you looking to learn what Canadian and international cannabis advocates are doing, not only now, but what got them to this point in their lives, and what does the future hold for them? Do you want to learn how patients are using cannabis as their daily medication, or learn how their cannabis use helps them with their medical condition? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I'm going to suggest to you to tune in to Lifestyle Radio. Catch their live weekly shows and have your questions and concerns answered and find the experience you're looking for. Monday, catch your weekly news broadcast with the Reef Reporters. Then on Wednesday, get several hours worth of cannabis public education. We get things started with Cannabis and Coffee with Tamarawana. Then tune in and catch Pottawa with Russell Barth, who calls himself the world's angriest pothead. Finish up your evening with the award-winning Pace Radio Show with Al Graham and joint host Kim Cooper and Alicia Yashishin. No week would be complete without tuning into Friday night's program, the 420 Radio Show, featuring Al Rapp and the 420 Radio crew, Mary Jane Baker and Marcel Gagnac. Cannabis is a lifestyle, and you can catch all your cannabis lifestyle information right here at lifestyleradio.net or at our sister site, 420radio.ca.
The following is a public service announcement from the Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, we feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled, or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet. www.canadiantherapeuticCannabisPartners.com, on Facebook, CTCP Society, or search Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners.
CTCP now operates a medicinal cannabis signing clinic. If you want to grow your own medicinal cannabis and are located anywhere in Canada, then I'd like to suggest that you give them a call. They can be reached at 1-613-967-9888. That's 1-613-967-9888. 9888 and grow on with CTCP.
Man, have you been to Canadays yet? Canadays, Campbellford's premier cannabis culture shop at 19 Bridge Street West. They've got bongs, oil rigs, grinders, and papers. Everything you need for consumption. They've got seeds, soil, nutrients, and dome trays too. Everything you need for cultivation. Get top quality seeds from top suppliers like Canuck and wholesaler Nexus. Canadays. They've got all kinds of awesome cannabis novelties, clothing, and apparel. I know, right? It's a lot more than just a bong shop. Interested in gaining legal access? Canadays can help. They're a PACE information center. You know, people advocating cannabis education. Come by the shop and check it out. 19 Bridge Street West, Campbellford. Canadays. Have your say without saying a word. Canadays.ca.
What I've found over my 25 years of experience is that I am treating their pain, and I believe they're responding to the opioid, but I'm also turning them into an addict. If you're going to put them on an opioid, educate them and tell them this is for short-term use, and we are going to take you off over this period of time. They're having a lot of pain, they're having a lot of withdrawal symptoms, they're miserable. I will introduce the cannabis in them.
Hey, we're back and we are live. Yes, we are live. We are broadcasting here at lifestyleradio.net as well at 420radio.ca. And of course, you can catch us at the Pace Radio Show website, found at pace-online.ca. Just to let you know, earlier in the program, Kim and I touched on the Global Marijuana March. Well, just thought I'd let you know, if you can't make the one in Toronto or anywhere else, right here at Lifestyle Radio, your favorite Lifestyle Radio hosts will be broadcasting live this Saturday as they bring you another edition of the 420 Road Show. This time the game will be broadcasting live from Toronto and other locations around across Canada. We're just hoping we can go from coast to coast. We'll be talking to advocates as they gather in the parks and those involved in the marches. So tune in to lifestyleradio.net this Saturday from about 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to about 6 for live coverage of the 20th Annual Global Marijuana March. Today on the program, we're joined by our guest, Neil Magnuson of the Vancouver Cannabis Substitution Program, and my joint host at Northern Ontario, Kim Cooper. Kim, before I give you the reins again, I just got to let our listeners know that, yes, Neil's movie, Still Trippin', is still available on YouTube. Right, Neil?
That's awesome.
It is.
Good.
Cool.
Good. So all you got to do is go to YouTube, search for Still Trippin', and you got two of them there, Still Trippin' 1 and Still Trippin' 2?
No, there was a Trip, the BC Bud Chronicles. I'm in that movie, but I wasn't the narrator and the guy behind that.
Oh, okay. All right.
They interviewed me. That movie came out, and then it was very successful, especially in Europe. And so when they got back, they wanted to make a sequel. And the part that I did in that movie was we were doing our Drug War History walking tour in Vancouver. And that they said that the critics all felt that segment that I did really tied together the reason for making the movie, why the laws were the way that they were, and that sort of thing. So when they got back from, or when they decided that they wanted to make a sequel, I had done a trip across Canada with the Freedom Tour and met a lot of activists along the way. The same people they wanted to interview for their second movie, which would have been, the first one was about activists and growers and med users in British Columbia, and the sequel was going to be about the same group all across Canada. So they felt I should come with them and interview these friends of mine for the movie, and that's how the movie came to be. So, yeah.
Wow. Awesome. Okay, Kim, over to you.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I mean, you've been doing so much for so long, and you're retired and that, but we were talking over the break on how retirement seems to make us busier than we were when we were full-time employees, for many of us out there, you and myself included. But you've fallen into a new thing that you're involved with, the Vancouver Cannabis Substitution Program. Now, this little enterprise that's going on is very near and dear to your heart. Tell us about the substitution program, Neil. Tell us more about it.
Well, retirement, I mean, it's probably not the right word for it. I quit my job when I put the herb school together over that long weekend side job that I did with David Malmo Levine, who was putting on the pot rallies here. And I learned during that renovation, the horrors of the pot prohibition, and that's why I quit my job. So I didn't really retire as much as I just decided I was going to take a new course. And so we had that herb school there. It was right at Main and Hastings. And we thought that the customer base would be friends of ours in the cannabis community that would venture into that particular area, which was, well known for hard drug use and a lot of homeless people and problems like that, street dealing. But we were offered that place for $100 a month rent. And that's why we were there. And we thought that some of our friends would venture down there and we would use it as an activist center, and we would sell cannabis there as a dispensary with a recreational model. But before long, most of our clientele were people from that area, and they were hard drug users. And they would sit there and make the hair on the back of our neck stand up with the stories they could tell us about how they became who they are, and bring us to tears as they would thank us for having cannabis, and especially the edibles. So when the opioid crisis hit and people were dying of opioid overdoses, it was clear to me that, one way for many people would be to substitute off of using street drugs and opioids onto using cannabis, especially in its edible form and in its concentrated form. So I went to first Vandu, which is in Vancouver. We have a group that formed to protect the marginalized community of people that use hard drugs. They were formed when we had another similar crisis here with respect to tainted opium and people dying of overdose. And so this advocacy group formed. It's funded by Coastal Health, and they are run by the street drug users themselves. They are all the members of the board. They do have a couple of hired people to help them keep things managed properly, but for the most part, it is those people from the downtown east side and from all of Vancouver that are involved with the homelessness and drug addiction and things like that speak for and on behalf of those people and try to keep them from being oppressed as much as they are by laws and things like that. So I first went to Vandu and proposed to them that we approach City Hall to get funding and support for a project that would provide edibles free to people that would use them to transition off of street drugs. And I got unanimous support from the board at Vandu to do that. I've had a long relationship with Vandu here since we opened the herb school back in 2004. And so with unanimous support, I went to City Hall, I wrote them a letter, and I approached the council, and they wouldn't even talk to me about it. They would have nothing to do with it. Cannabis is federally regulated. Edibles are banned in the city, and they want nothing to do with it. So right. I had a lawyer friend of mine. His dad had worked with the City Hall as a lawyer for about 40 years, and he spent 2 months lobbying them on my behalf, trying to get them on board with what we were doing without success. So after 2 months, I had been spending that time approaching my friends in the cannabis industries, in the dispensaries and suppliers to get donations and commitments for donations to give to these people, should we get approval or without approval. And after 2 months, I had basically what I needed to hand out a bunch, and I went to Vandu. We set up a table and put up a sign and just handed them out to as many people as wanted them, and then gave them all out. Said, I'll be back. I'm not sure when. I got more donations, and I went back there and did it again, and they said, when will you be back? And I wasn't sure. And that happened several times, and there was 3 Saturdays in a row, the last 3 Saturdays in a row. I didn't ever post it or announce when I was going to be there. I just went there and had these donations 3 Saturdays in a row. And the 4th Saturday, I showed up there, and there was a long lineup of people, and they were there for me. Thankfully, there was also a bunch of people that showed up. Word had gotten out. There was also a bunch of people there that said, hey, I want to help. What can I do? And I said, well, I guess you can start rolling joints because we want to give out joints. And I wasn't even going to give out joints as part of this project originally. The way I presented it at City Hall was it was just edibles. Right. And it was going to be edibles properly packaged, properly labeled for dosage. And in the end, it was like, I'll take whatever I can get. I'm just going to give it to people because it's all helping them. They're on their own path. Sometimes they take too much and they learn about that and they learn how to modulate their own usage. We do as best we can to educate them as we give it out. We warn everybody, don't eat all of that. But what we give out...
Rarely do they listen, right?
No, that's not true. That's not true. Most of the time, they do have the experience of eating too much, but they don't have it more than 2 or 3 more times after that for the most part.
Yeah.
It's not very comfortable eating too much cannabis.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Yeah. I do get reports of people, sleeping for 3 days or, up all night hanging onto a pole, stuff like that. But it's fairly rare. And we gave out 240 care packs the other day, I think a week ago Sunday, before Welfare Day. And the day before Welfare Day that we're there is always our busiest time. Just like the day after Welfare Day that we go there is always our least busiest time. But, we typically give out about on average 160 to 180 care packs, and a care pack would have 4 to 6 edibles and a couple of joints. And like I said, I originally wasn't going to give out the joints, but I did have some joints left over because I'm the guy in charge at our pot rallies of putting together the cannabis and getting it all rolled up that we throw away for free. We threw out over 10 pounds this past 420. We're rolling right now for the GMM, and I get to be in charge of all that. So I had some joints, and so when I started giving out the edibles, I also gave out some joints. And people right away were asking when I was back the next time, if they could have joints. And it turns out that the edibles take about 45 minutes to kick in some cases, between 20 and 45 minutes, sometimes an hour, depending on a person's metabolism or what's in it and that kind of thing. And the joints get them through to that. So They can smoke the joint, that gets them high till the edibles kick in, and then they're good. And we're getting just amazing reports from people on how they're being helped by what we're giving them, for sure.
Okay, now let's get to that part of it, the help that they're getting. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, what good is it? Drugs are drugs. But cannabis has been known, the CBD as well as the THC, it helps them stay away from the stuff that they're trying to stay away from.
Right, and mostly what they're trying to do is stay away from the feelings of loneliness and isolation and trauma that have been plaguing them for their entire lives. The vast majority of the people that are struggling the way that our population that we're dealing with are struggling, they're the abused children of our society. They've been traumatized through family sexual abuse, other sexual abuse, rape, murder, bad family breakups, things that traumatize kids. Some people never get over it. It's not their fault.
Right.
And they need to deal with it somehow, and they find some relief in some drugs. A drug is a drug. Well, there's many different drugs, and there's many different ways to take drugs, and there's many different dosages of drugs. And drugs are neither good nor bad. Drugs are just things that can be good if you use them correctly and can be bad if you use them incorrectly. And there's many different drugs for different things. They're finding some relief with the opioids that they're given. In some other cases, I talked about the abused children. In other cases, there's adults that were put on opiates for serious injury and trauma that they had in the workplace or in accidents that happened or whatever. And then, there's a resistance to keep people on these things for good reason. And so the medical community many times pulls people off before they're ready to come off, or don't pull them off in a way that allows them to transition off properly, and leaves them in serious pain and suffering. And so they do what desperate people will do, is they find what they need somehow. And they either get it out of a friend's medicine cabinet or some guy on the street or somebody knows somebody or whatever, but they end up cycling into these areas where this now tainted fentanyl is killing people. And it's not just homeless people on the downtown east side in Vancouver and all across North America. These are young men mostly and fairly young people, under 45 years of age in all walks of life that, are struggling with emotional pain that nobody knows about, that, they're doing the best
a lot of people are struggling with addiction. Cannabis has been known to help greatly get you over the hump, so to speak, when you're trying to stay away from it and you're getting clean. It can help you transition, make the transition more easy.
Big time. We have to be a little bit careful about communicating to people that all they need to do is throw their needles and their other powders away and just go home with some cannabis and they'll be fine. That's not necessarily the case. It can be, but it's a transition. It's a thing of trying and finding out what works and what helps. And over the course of time, many people in my experience are now people that'll tell you that cannabis saved their life. that they had serious addiction problems, and now they're completely clean, and that's in their past, and they just love their cannabis.
And addiction comes in many forms, as you said. It's
For
not
sure.
just your guys or your girls that are on the street corners in, like downtown Vancouver, Lower East Side, or in Toronto, it's Parkdale or wherever the case may be.
And some people only think of the drug injectors.
That's right.
They don't
or
think
the
of
crack cocaine pipe or whatever like that. But I mean, people like myself, when I was at the height of what I was taking medicinally, prescribed by a doctor, when I was at the height of the amount of pills I was ingesting every day, I was up to 18 pills a day. And when you're taking those pills for 5 and 8 years long, you can't tell me I wasn't addicted. Of course I was.
And doing pretty serious damage to your brain, to your liver, to all sorts of other different things. Cannabis is the answer. It's amazing. We are made out of cannabis, for God's sakes, and I'm not terribly religious, but for God's sakes might be the right term there. I mean, we are part of nature. We grew on this planet over the course of millennia, and we've grown up with the plants as part of our environment. The reason we have an endocannabinoid system is because our ancestors, their staple food source was cannabis. You are what your ancestors ate. That's what our bodies are made out of. And that's why we have this system that creates these exact same cannabinoids, the anandamides and those other chemicals that our bodies create that are duplicates of what is found on the cannabis plant, is because that ancient plant, the cannabis plant, that's so much older than 95% of the rest of the plants on this planet. It has a male and a female. It has the taproot that goes way down. It's not insect pollinated. It's wind pollinated. And, it's just a very ancient plant. And it's here, we've helped it survive. It's helped us survive. We have a symbiotic relationship with this plant. And because of its utility, because it's so valuable, and it interferes with the private enterprises of groups that would like to control the consumption of what we have, that's why it's made illegal. It was never made illegal because it drove people violent and insane.
That's right. That's right.
And it continues today. Yeah. And it's such a horrific crime. Trudeau liked to say, we need gender equality because it's 2015. Well, we need some actual equality because it's now 2018, and we're still going to have the person on the right who's smoking legal cannabis compared to the person on the left smoking illegal cannabis. It used to be you had the person on the right smoking cigarettes, and the guy on the left smoking cannabis, and you'd go, well, that one's killing people, and this one's a medicine, and that one's illegal and will put you in jail, and this one is encouraged, and advertised. But now it's cannabis versus cannabis even. The world's gotten even crazier.
Yeah.
So it won't last, Kim. I'm an optimist. I believe that this is a transition period that, of course, that empire of nastiness that has been controlling, our drugs and stuff for so long, doesn't want to give up, the cash cow and will do its best to try to do what they're doing. This is just a natural result of a corporation and a group that doesn't want to give up the money that's been coming in. So they're doing what they need to do, but they don't have any of the actual truth on their side, right? They're living on lies. They're going to be exposed for this, right? Drex on CKNW last night, he was wonderful, talking about these guys from the real estate board trying to tell the senators that you shouldn't allow people to grow 4 plants because to grow up. Oh my God! Like you said, people like plants in their house. People like lots of plants in their house, and all those house plants that you can have. There's about 125 varieties here in Vancouver. They're all poisonous. Your kids start chewing on them ones, they're in a lot of trouble.
And their houses are filled with them. Just filled.
They
some
are.
houses. I've gone into some that are just jungles, and it's like, holy shit.
I know. And lots of people have orchids growing under lights, and they grow heirloom tomatoes in their basement. All these people must be really nervous right about now. I like your point about stoves. You're absolutely correct. That's what they learned in the Allard hearings, that it's the kitchens that cause fires in Canadians' homes. Yet no movement to ban kitchens or ban cooking, and mold is in everybody's bathroom. should we be banning bathrooms?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
there's
Get rid
mold
of
in
all
there.
the
There's
shower
other even worse
stalls.
stuff in there.
Shower stalls gone. Put regulators in your hot water tap so you don't create steam.
I know.
Come on. How far are we going to go here?
I don't think humans should be trusted with their own feces. Like, that stuff is dangerous.
We have all kinds of chemical cleaners in our homes.
I think we should have, public should pay for diaper changers for all of us so that we don't have to deal with our own feces because we can't be trusted, obviously.
Yeah.
It's that stupid, isn't it? I mean, if they tried to do the same thing with tomatoes as what they're doing with cannabis, wouldn't we all be out in the street holding our tomatoes up proudly saying, fuck you?
Yeah. Yeah, we would be.
We would be.
We would be for sure. We wouldn't let them get away with it. There's no question.
No,
so why are we
they're getting away with they're getting away with making slaves out of us. I mean, and maybe that's not a fair comparison because I know the real slaves had it way worse, but it's modern day slavery. We're owned somehow by these people. They get to make whatever rules they want for us, and we can do very little about it, it seems. We need a democracy that has limited, accountable, transparent public servants that recognize that they are public servants and that they're there to protect the public from corporate interests because that's the biggest threat to the public and regulate accordingly. So,
Yeah. Well, we kind of handed it to them on a silver platter.
They've taken it, but you're right.
We really did. It is not turning out the way we expected, that's for sure. But
Canadians in general are apathetic, right?
Yeah.
Canadians, we're very apathetic. We're very easygoing. We don't fight much here in Canada. But the cannabis community, 10 times more apathetic in that regard. If we were like being stimulated by the use of some substance that made us aggressive, then how would we take the oppression that we're facing as a cannabis community? We'd be up in arms, serious arms like guns. We would not put up with this at all. But because we can smoke a joint and chill, and we're all about love and we're all about peace, and we really are, we're not able to really stand up and fight for our rights like we should, and that's why we've lost them. You're absolutely right. That's why they've been able to take them from us, is because
the Canadian way, right? It's the Canadian
the peaceful way.
It's
one
the way
love.
we do it.
Yeah.
I mean, but hopefully it's like you said, it's an evolving process, and we'll see it evolve over time. No first draft of any document is ever correct, right? It goes through revisions and and changes, and hopefully this will do the same. The question is, what's the time period on those changes? That's the ultimate question.
These things drag on forever, it seems, and they continue to prey on us. And you said it's a Canadian thing. Well, I agree that the apologetic, sort of apathetic thing is a Canadian trait, but the cannabis apathetic, easygoing way is a worldwide trait. Throughout the cannabis community, we are a one love peoples all around the world, and the oppression of our peoples, the cannabis community around the world, is absolutely horrific. People are jailed for lifetimes in horrible conditions. They're executed in half a dozen countries for possession of a couple of ounces of cannabis. It's horrible oppression all around the world, and that's why we need people to come out on Saturday and support your local GMM, because that's when we talk about what's going on around the world with the stigmatization, the horrible, horrible treatment of the cannabis community worldwide. It's such a global issue. And those people around the world that don't have the ability to speak up like we do, we need to speak up on their behalf. We need to keep going and keep doing what we're doing for them. Canada is a beacon to the rest of the world. They're watching us so closely to see what we're going to do with our legalization. We can't let Trudeau get away with a legalization that oppresses us even more than what their original prohibition did. We must stop this from happening. Or like you say, get a second draft coming quick. Get things changing. We as a community need to collect stats, and we need to present those stats, because the stats will save us. We are not alcohol users. We are not violent. We are not costing society a penny. We are beneficial to society, and the stats will prove that. and we need to keep pushing that. It's not over for us as activists at all yet. We have not got what we've been asking for at all. Now we have an even more serious battle ahead of us, because a good number of the Canadian public are going to think, well, this is legalization. They should now be satisfied. We should not be hearing from those activists anymore. And yeah, so what if the people that had businesses as dealers before don't get to have businesses now? You know, they were just criminals then anyway. That's what the majority of the Canadian public is going to think if the media doesn't tell them different, and if we don't tell the media that difference.
Absolutely. That's why we need the GMMs now more than ever, just like you said.
Yep.
So, and globally, I mean, over 80 countries participate. Hundreds of communities within Canada alone participate. Find one near you or join us online, and you can catch multiple communities from coast to coast right here on Lifestyle Radio this Saturday. And with that, I think we're going to a commercial.
Yes, we are. We are going to go for a commercial break. And I was just going to say before we go to the break, just because we end up with legalization doesn't mean that everything is over. The fight still continues for improvements, for sure, big time.
Yeah.
And around the world, especially.
Exactly. Okay, it's time to hear again from our good doctor, Dr. Wallace, and what he has found in his research with cannabis and opiate drugs. When we return, Kim and I will continue our conversation with Neil Magnuson. You're listening to the Pace Radio Show. We are live here at lifestyleradio.net.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
And I'm finding that I can suppress some of the withdrawal symptoms in those patients, and then they're able to come down further on the opioids. In doing that, it's probably 80% of the patients are successful in coming off.
Man, have you been to Canadays yet? Canadays, Campbellford's premier cannabis culture shop at 19 Bridge Street West. They've got bongs, oil rigs, grinders, and papers. Everything you need for consumption. They've got seeds, soil, nutrients, and dome trays too. Everything you need for cultivation. Get top quality seeds from top suppliers like Canuck and wholesaler Nexus. Canadays. They've got all kinds of awesome cannabis novelties, clothing, and apparel. I know, right? It's a lot more than just a bong shop. Interested in gaining legal access? Canadays can help. They're a PACE information center. You know, people advocating cannabis education. Come by the shop and check it out. 19 Bridge Street West, Campbellford. Canadays. Have your say without saying a word. Canadays.ca.
Hi, this is Al Graham of the Pace Radio Show. Are you keeping pace, as in keeping people advocating cannabis education? If you're not, and you're a cannabis consumer, then why not? Others are working hard every day to help educate people about cannabis so you can enjoy your daily 420. Get involved and speak out. Be loud and proud so that you can keep pace. Tune into the Pace Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear about
people advocating cannabis education here on lifestyleradio.ca.
In 2017, the Canadian government announced that although recreational cannabis would be federally legal, its distribution and sale would be determined by individual provinces. Later that fall, the province of Ontario announced its proposed legal framework, that a subsidiary of the LCBO be the sole proprietor of cannabis in our province, essentially creating a one-party monopoly. This government-controlled monopoly could result in longer wait times, supply issues, and insufficient experience due to lack of proper consultation with the pre-existing industry. The provincial government believes this framework will restrict access to children and help eliminate the black market, but this proposed action will only push illicit suppliers further underground. Meanwhile, over the past 2 decades, there's been a growing industry of intelligent, savvy, and responsible cannabis entrepreneurs who have been working hard to provide access and education around the medicinal, therapeutic, and recreational uses of cannabis. We are Sensible Ontario. We're not new, but we're excited to meet you. Visit our website now and donate to become a part of Making Sense.
If you'd like to learn more about Sensible Ontario, go to sensibleontario.ca.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
One thing that I have found is that there are many patients that come to me that have used cannabis. And when I ask them about it, they say, oh, it was horrible and I didn't like it and I don't want to try it. And I said, well, who was guiding you with dosing? And they said, nobody. I just got the authorization, I went to the dispensary and I got it. And then I say, well, I think we ought to try it again. And most of them will come back and say, the ones that say it didn't work are coming back and say, wow, it works and I like it.
Hey, welcome back and thanks for tuning into the program. Tonight's bumper audio was from Dr. Mark Wallace, who is the chairman of the Division of Pain Medicine at the University of California, and he was talking about how cannabis can help with opiate addictions. Today on the show, we are talking about opiate addictions and stuff with Neil Magnuson, who is with the Vancouver Cannabis Substitution Program, and my joint host, Northern Ontario, Kim Cooper. Well, you two, we're down to the last segment in the last 20 seconds, or 20 minutes. I know, Kim, you've got lots more questions to go, so let's get at her.
Yeah, for sure. I could stay on with Neil for another hour, but we don't have time to do that, so I'm going to try and cram in as much as I can here. Neil, the Cannabis Substitution Program in Vancouver, we went through on how near and dear it is to your heart and how it works and stuff and how it got started. Tell us the lowdown on where are you guys set up? How often are you there? How do people find out more?
Okay, we're at 380 East Hastings, which is a block and a half up from Main and Hastings, that infamous area code. That's the offices of Vandu. They have a large foyer there, and we set up inside their foyer. We set up a counter. We put our sign on it, all the edible donations we have in behind. And we have a bunch of volunteers that keep the line in order because we have a long lineup of people that wait for us. There's about 160 people we give care packs to. We have a bunch of volunteers, Andrew and the Holy Rollers. They meet and roll a bunch of joints that we give out, 2 joints per pack. There's typically 4 to 6 edibles and 2 joints per pack that we hand out. There's Michael, one of our bakers, also usually comes and helps put bags together, and Jen, she helps me as well. It really works because of these volunteers. I certainly couldn't do it myself, absolutely. And Vandu also supplies some volunteers to help at the door and to help with keeping the line in order. We give out joints to people in the lineup as they're waiting to try to keep them calm and happy, and sometimes they're less calm and happy than than we like. There are some issues with that line. I made a mistake of going out and saying, okay, we've only got about 20 packs left a few times. And apparently what happens when I do that is a whole bunch of people rush from the back and butt into the front, and then arguments ensue and what have you. So I don't do that anymore. We're learning as we go. But it's a real... it's like a big production.
It shows you how intense they are to get this stuff, how much it must be helping them. With their struggle, if they're going to be that intense about it. I mean, over 160 people you serve every time you go. And I love that, the Holy Rollers. The Holy Rollers. I mean, that's fantastic. I love that.
The Holy Rollers started because of the 420 and the Cannabis Day rallies that we have here. And like I said, I've been in charge of that for years, putting all those joints together. And so we formed a group, and they called themselves the Holy Rollers many years ago. And now they're involved with the Cannabis Substitution Project. We've been 14 months doing what we're doing at Vandu. We were once a week for over a year, went there every Saturday. And then I proposed to the board that we change that up because the Saturday lineup was getting a little hard to manage, and we would go some other days besides Saturday. And I wanted 3 days. I thought we could disperse it amongst 3 days, and it wouldn't really triple our volume. It would just disperse the lineups to different days. But they only approved me for one extra day. So now we've been going for the last 2 months at 2 days a week. We go Sundays and Thursdays now at noon. And we didn't really succeed in dispersing the amount of people we're helping. Like you say, there's a huge demand. Word is getting out, and we really need to have, I hate to say government funding, but they really should be helping us do what we're doing. Right now, it's on the generosity of a whole bunch of different people. We have our regulars, Green Wilderness, Michael the Cookie Monster with his Herbie's cookies, Herbie's herbal cookies, the medicinal cannabis dispensary, Dana Larson's dispensary, Cannabis Culture. Those are people that help us every single week. They've got a big donation for us, and that really keeps us going. And then a bunch of other people randomly every few weeks, or new people come and go, will come and drop stuff off to us or call me up, and I can go and pick it up and bring it there.
And all of this is done on donations, right?
All on donations. Everybody's a volunteer. I do have a handful of donation boxes in dispensaries, but there's very little that ever comes in through them. I guess the dispensaries don't promote them very much. One of the Cannabis Culture ones does. I think there was $40 in that one after 2 weeks recently. And that money all goes into buying cannabis shake that we give to the bakers, and then they make edibles for us.
Yeah.
And they put more money into everything that they're doing than what they're getting. And like, we supply them shake, but they put all the other ingredients in. It's all from the heart. Everybody's just doing it from the heart.
Wow. Community spirit and action. I mean, that's amazing. Go ahead, Al.
So with all this great work that you're doing there, Neil, are you hearing anything from the city? Like, I know in Toronto there was, a bit of commotion about when they opened up same idea as you've got going there. Is the city?
Yeah, I didn't hear about that in Toronto. I mean, at Vandu, with our weekly and now bi-weekly events, we have had no police, no members of the city at all, period. I think that's outrageous. I think that the coastal health people should be there. If they think edibles are bad, they should come and see what we're doing there. They should be doing studies on what we're giving people and how to, whether it's hurting them or helping them. All that should be happening, but it's not. We've had nothing from government at all. I tried to reach out to other communities because, as I mentioned, it's not just a downtown east side problem, and we wanted to get the message out to other communities in Vancouver about this. And there was a group that had been, for a couple of years, they were going once a month on a Saturday. They would set up at the art gallery and sell cannabis from vendors' booths, and they got away with that for that length of time. And then they decided to go every Saturday. And then they found out what we found out, and that is that people that can't afford it are struggling and knowing that cannabis can help. And they were being approached by people to help them, and they were giving people cannabis edibles for free, like we're doing, to help them. And they felt that they should be there more than once a week, and they went to going every day just before Christmas. And then it got to be a big thing, and the media didn't like that, and CTV especially, sitting on the corner there overlooking that farmer's market that was there every day, all day in Robson Square. It was a beautiful thing. Every booth was busy. Every booth was helping 7 to 10 people, with free edibles to help them with their opioid addictions every day. We were trying to get that message out to the media, but the media wouldn't listen to what we were saying. They would interview us. They'd take out tiny clips that didn't look good from what people were saying and put that on the news. And they would talk about problems that didn't really exist. And they ended up getting the police to shut down that market. And so we were there as the Cannabis Substitution Project for just under 2 weeks. And we weren't involved in the raid. Nothing came of that for us as our group, except that we now felt that we weren't being able to help people like we were, because we also were helping a lot of people right there. So we set up a couple other times, not in Robson Square, but other places in the city. And the police came within 45 minutes the first time we had the police there. They seized all of the edibles and stuff that I had on the table for people. They took it away. They didn't charge me. They said I could come down to the station and claim it if I wanted to. And that's what they're doing in Vancouver now, is that they won't charge you. They'll take what you have. If it's substantial and you go and try to get it back, if you have a license or whatever, then they'll charge you. I don't know what becomes of that. I'm sure people that have valid licenses, end up not having to go to court on it. But that's their kind of strategy here now, is they'll seize your stuff. And if you're bold enough to go ask for it back, they'll try to find a way to charge you for it.
That's crazy, eh? You were talking about, getting some financing or some funding from some agencies, or you hate to go to government and that kind of thing. Now, with this being what it is, the Cannabis Substitution Program, you're getting people off of opiates. To me, this is a health issue. Shouldn't this fall under Health Canada?
It should. I suspected that we would have coastal health there fairly quickly with what we were doing. We were very open and trying to be public about what we were doing, but they didn't show. I want funding from them. I want support from them, but I don't want to use LP weed. I will not use Trudeau's dealer's weed. So we're going to have that battle, and I was expecting to have that battle, but I was expecting to have it a long time ago. We're 14 months into doing this. We've given out probably 60,000 edibles to people. So I really thought we'd be having these conversations long before now. We've had some media coverage on it. The media is aware of us. There's been stories written in a few local newspapers, and they've talked about us on CKNW a couple of times. And I was on Linda Steele's show when I was part of that farmers market when it all got shut down for just a few minutes, enough to get our message out a little bit. I felt we had that opportunity. But, we are not being embraced by the people that should be in charge of trying to deal with this horrible crisis going on in our communities at all. We shame on them, right?
Yeah, so, for sure. Now, in lieu of not getting any funding, I guess you're always looking for people to help you out with donations and that kind of thing. Yep. So companies, dispensaries, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. It's a full-time job for me, gathering up the donations to make it work, event by event. It's not week by week anymore. Now it's twice a week. And that's really put a lot of pressure on having enough. Although, our last event on Sunday, we had more edibles than I've ever had before. It was wonderful. We had a whole bunch, so much that I decided to take a picture of it and lay it all out on the table and take a picture of it. I don't usually do that. What I usually do is I take some from each donation that we have that we're going to put into a care pack, and I lay that on the table, and I take a picture of that, and I say, this is what's going into today's care packs. But this last time I thought, I got so much stuff. This is amazing. I'm so happy. I'm going to take a big picture of all of it. So I laid it out all on a desk and took a picture of all of the amount there. And then after I took the picture and we started doing it, other people showed up with big bags full of more stuff for us to give out. It was fantastic. We had beautiful, huge care packs for people this last time. Nobody was turned away. Sometimes we turn people away. That's why I had to go out and say, hey, we only got 20 left, because the lineup will be 60 people long still. After 140 people, we still have 60 people in a lineup, and we don't have enough. So we try to make sure we have at least a joint for everybody.
Yeah.
But the last time we had an amazing amount. I hope that continues. I think people are really understanding that what we're doing is powerful and good, and that we need help, and that they are, getting behind this. So I hope that continues. It seems to be a very long-term thing. It's been over a year, and I don't see any end in sight. I think that we have to keep going there and doing this for a while yet, and it's probably going to get bigger. I thought Vandu might take it under their wing and run it as a program themselves, but there's a lot of bureaucracy that goes on. It's very tough to get that to happen. They'd have to have 2 general meetings to get the membership to vote on it, and then And they're telling me behind the scenes that they've already got an awful lot on their plate with what they're trying to accomplish, and that they're afraid that this would be, a big project for them to deal with. So they're quite happy having me and my volunteers show up and just do it.
You're doing it, so they're not gonna put their hat in the ring. But so bakers out there, companies, extract makers, bakers, and cooks of all types, get in touch with Neil Magnuson and the Vandu or the Cannabis Substitution Program in Vancouver for sure. Absolutely.
Well, or if you want to start your own chapter, like this needs to happen in all the communities where they have an issue with this. If you have a user group in your community, like we have Vandu here, which is Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users, if there's an established group that speaks on behalf of the drug users in your community, you can approach them and just find ways that work to give them out to the people there. Try to get your city council on board. I also went to the Vancouver Police Board meeting and spoke to them and told them all about what we were doing shortly after I talked to city council. They, a couple of them came and shook my hand. They nodded and smiled and thanked me, basically. But I wasn't really looking for anything from them either. I just was going to inform them of what we were trying to accomplish.
Let them know that you're going to be out there.
That's good.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it works, and if you want to send stuff to Vancouver, that's fine. We'll certainly make good use of it here, but I would really encourage people to find a way to get it into the right hands of people in your communities. And more than that, what we're also trying to do, what was one of the main things about what I'm wanting to do, is to create that buzz, if you'll forgive the pun, that that cannabis works for people. Like if you have an opioid addiction and you just poo-poo the idea of cannabis because it's just a weak, soft drug compared to what you need for your problems or pain or whatever you're dealing with, well, give it a second thought, because edibles are quite potent and quite powerful, and a couple of good, strong edibles can get most people through the night without any of those withdrawal symptoms, and it really can work. And concentrates are really powerful as well. It's a lot more potent than just, smoking a joint. I know that smoking a joint doesn't do it for people that really need the opioid level of pain killing, but those edibles and those concentrates really can do it. So that's the message that needs to get out there for people. We're giving it away for free to people that can't afford it and are willing to line up for a couple of hours to get a small pack. But for people that can afford it, they should be really thinking about putting their money to a baker or somebody that can get them some edibles and give that a shot and try, because it's worked for so many people.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Neil.
Thank you for the airtime. That's a message I really want to get out there. And
not
a problem, people.
Yep. Hey, we don't mind helping out in a situation like this. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Neil, with us down to the last 5 minutes here, have you got website, shout out, that type of thing that you'd like to promote?
I mean, you can find the Cannabis Substitution Project on Facebook. There's a group there, and we post every time we're there pictures of what we've done, and people post their stories there of how cannabis works for them, and we put all the studies that we find about how cannabis is working and that kind of stuff. So I would like to promote that. But what I'd really like to say is that freedom is very important, and it's something that as a population, the masses of people on this planet haven't ever really had properly. We've been oppressed by the ruling elite, the financial elite, for millennia here, and we've fought hard to get out from underneath the thumbs of these people, and our forefathers have fought and died to get us to where we are. And because we have truth on our side and what's right and wrong, and what's right is that you deserve not to be bullied by people, whether they're wearing a crown or calling themselves a king or a prime minister or whoever that is. And it's extremely important that we respect the efforts so far to get us to where we are now, and that we're not there yet. And we need to keep fighting for those rights, or we will lose them, and we will be slaves of corporations in the not-too-distant future, that now that they have the technologies to lock us all down. And if they get away with manipulating us and the media through lies and reefer madness, then they're going to get away with a lot worse in the future. So please continue your efforts wherever you find your niche to help and to build a better future of freedom for our future generations to come, because it looks very bleak if we're not able to do that. And Canada is the one place that's going to lead the world in this if we Canadians can get behind this. And it's important not to be apathetic and not to just let it be what it be. Let's make it the way that we want to make it. Let's be the change we want to see. That's what I want to say.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Neil. Well said, Neil.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, no problem. We appreciate like to give you people a chance to speak out. That's part of the idea behind the program, is to give others a voice so they can be heard loudly. So,
Yep.
Thank you so
Kim?
much.
Yeah, I'm going to give my shout out to a small group of 8 people. Well, actually 7 because I'm the 8th. So a small group of 7 people that I've met over the course of the last 4 months. I'm not going to name them all, but they know who they are. There's a group of people in the Timmins and Timmins region that have come together to put on events in the local area for the cannabis community and cannabis awareness and patients' rights. It's great to see such an outpouring of support and a great group that has come together, complete strangers, coming together for one goal, for one purpose, and that's to educate the public. They're working well together and making things happen in Northern Ontario regions. It's inspirational, and I hope other people take note and are able to do the same thing in their area of rural Canada. Together, we can make change. So let's make it happen.
That's right. Like-minded people join together to make change. It doesn't matter whether you know them or not. You'll know them soon.
That's right. That's right.
That's right. Okay, I got 2 reminders for everybody. Next week, we will be live with Alicia Yashishin and her special guests, as well as a reminder that don't forget to tune in this Saturday afternoon, as Lifestyle Radio will be broadcasting live from the Global Marijuana March in Toronto, as well as other locations. Timmins will be one of them, right, Kim?
Yeah, and the group of 7 that I was discussing, you can find out information about them and their events at 420 Timmins on Facebook.
All right. Thank you go out to our sponsors, the friendly and helpful folks at CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. They're found at ccnexus.global. And to Canadays here in downtown Camelford for giving us a location to help educate the masses. Our producer, Al Rapp, the man behind the baggie. Also a huge big thank you to you, Neil, for coming on the program and sharing your story, what's going on there in Vancouver.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And to my joint host, Northern Ontario, I'll get this out right, Northern Ontario, Kim Cooper, for everything you do for the program. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Al, as always.
And a big thank you to our listeners for tuning in the program. Thank you, and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.